Chairman McCaul, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Time. First question, what are the most significant key findings from this investigation that the public should know about?
I think the fatal flaw was we had the military on the ground doing their job. The commander-in-chief said, retrograde, get out. The intelligence community reporting that the conditions on the ground were not good. State Department had rose-colored lenses on. They really didn't want to accept the fact that when we pulled our troops out and air cover and contractors, that the Afghan military had no chance, and it was going to happen really fast. Federal law, U.S. law, requires State Department to initiate evacuation plans. They were very reluctant and resistant to doing that because they thought it would look like a failure. So they wait until the Taliban had overrun Kabul before they initiate the process of an evacuation plan. This is the key fact that led to the chaos, that led to Americans being left behind, Afghan allies being left behind, and all the women and children. And it also led to the chaos at HKIA, because we had to put the Taliban in charge of screening travel documents. The first checkpoint was controlled by the Taliban. If the Taliban saw an Afghan ally, they're not going to let them through. Then they get to at the HKIA airport to be processed by consulars, and we have our Marines there. The fateful day comes. We know there's going to be an attack. We know it's imminent, and we actually know the time. And yet nothing really was done to stop it. And then the suicide bomber from the Bagram prisons, by the way, thousands of ISIS released, explodes, 13 servicemen and women, 170 Afghans killed, and 45 Americans and Afghans injured.
The report speaks a great deal about the lack of planning for a non-combatant evacuation operation. Who do you think should be held accountable from the administration for this failure?
Well, the initial process rests with the chief of the mission, the ambassador. Ambassador Wilson did not want to do this. 22 of his employees sent an emergency cable, a cry for help, saying, we have to get out of here. It wasn't until Kabul was overrun that they finally do this. And who was the first one to the airport? Ambassador Wilson, leaving behind about 100 Afghan local employees to their death. They were on the tarmac, he sent them back. The Taliban got thousands of classified documents. They had to burn passports so people couldn't get out, and this all led to the chaos.
The report alleges too that the Biden administration ignored key conditions in the Doha agreement, and they prioritized optics over security.
Right.
Then they botched the withdrawal from Afghanistan. What were the root causes, in your opinion, for this debacle?
Politics. I mean, it was the optics of failure. They did not want this evacuation to look like a failure. In fact, today they still call it a success. Vice President Harris calls it courageous. It was not a success. It was one of the worst catastrophic failures. It's epic, the failures that took place that day. And the sad thing is it could have been prevented. So my job, I don't want to be a partisan exercise here. I want to make sure it never happens again. And we will have legislation to fix this so that the next time a Saigon or Kabul happens, we will know what is to take place. Everybody was confused. Nobody knew who was in charge. That has to be completely overhauled. And it's not in place today. And it led to the deaths of so many people. And I just saw a baby in Afghanistan who died today due to malnutrition. I mean, on the ground in Afghanistan is very sad.
The reports indicates that the conditions of withdrawal, the circumstances of withdrawal, have allowed Afghanistan to become a haven for terrorists again.
Yeah.
How concerned are you about the resurgence of Al-Qaeda, ISIS-K again in Afghanistan?
Yeah.
And what should the administration, this administration or the next administration, do to mitigate this danger?
So if you deny, look, you're not going to kill an ideology, but if you can deny occupying space to govern, then that's how we got rid of the caliphate in Syria and Iraq. Well, we're going down that path in Afghanistan, but now it's all going backwards. When you have thousands of ISIS-K, the worst of the worst, released from the Bagram prisons, assimilating with the Taliban and with Al-Qaeda. Remember, Zawahiri's under the cover of the Haqqani Taliban network, if that tells you anything. And all the experts, intelligence I talk to, it is resurging. A good example of this is the Khorasan region, Tajikistan, Pakistan, Afghanistan, where ISIS-K and the external operators are. The FBI detained 8 ISIS-K individuals in the United States who crossed our southern border. When I chaired Homeland for 3 terms, never saw that happen. But it's happening now. And an ISIS smuggling ring. So, and who else is in the country? So this is not like halfway around the world problem. This directly impacts the homeland. And lastly, if I could say, the foreign policy impact of this disaster has been enormous because it projected weakness. It invited Putin to invade Ukraine, Chairman Xi to align with him, threaten Taiwan, the Ayatollah rearing his ugly head with Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthi rebels. So it's interconnected, and it all started with Afghanistan.
How effective do you think what the Biden administration calls over-the-horizon, new boots-on-the-ground strategy in counterterrorism, especially in Afghanistan?
You can't replace human intelligence on the ground, and we have none. We have no eyes and ears. All we have is, basically out of the UAE and out of Doha, we have places where we can fly. The weather is always a problem. It takes a long time to respond. In these situations, timing is very important, and we can't respond in a timely fashion. And every expert I talked to, they said, we no longer have eyes and ears on the ground in Afghanistan. That's dangerous because we can't see Afghanistan, but we also can't see China, Russia, and Iran as well.
The report also deals and talks a great deal about the allies left behind, the Afghan allies left behind. Can you say a word about those people left behind, and what could the United States do or should do to rebuild trust with its allies worldwide?
That's a great point. Our allies don't trust us after this because we threw our Afghan allies in the grease. We promised them we will protect them at all costs. They fought alongside our soldiers and the interpreters. What did we do? We didn't get them out. We should get them out today. But you know what the Taliban's doing? They have the biometric devices, and they go door to door, and they ask them to put their fingerprint on the machine, and if they get a positive identification, they're then arrested, persecuted, tortured, and in some cases executed. It was absolute betrayal.
How do you respond to critics that say, well, especially people from the administration, they would say if we kept the 2,500 troops in Afghanistan, that would have prolonged America's already longest war, and they say that the responsibility lies not with the Biden administration alone, but also the previous administration, the Trump administration, because the withdrawal was inevitable.
So Doha was created to start negotiations, but it had conditions. First and foremost, if the Taliban hit U.S. forces, all bets are off. When that happened, President Trump said, I'm leaving 2,500 troops, 6,500 NATO, air cover in place. All of that stabilized Afghanistan. Very small footprint, but with the air cover, tremendous air cover, and contractors that we have, we can stabilize. We have 30,000 troops in South Korea. We have about 100,000 in Europe, 2,500 to stabilize a critical area with ISR on Russia, China, and Iran, and the terrorist threat. I think that stability is worth the price, and it's very unfortunate. What President Biden's spokesman said about Doha was, that is immaterial. That doesn't matter. That's not why we are withdrawing. We are fulfilling a campaign promise.
What's your view of former President Trump using this issue as a line of attack against Vice President Harris? And how do you respond to Democrats that criticize Republicans and accuse Republicans for politicizing this issue?
Right. I never wanted this to be a political exercise. You know, I was a federal prosecutor. I want to get to the truth, make sure it doesn't happen again, get all the facts and the evidence. I didn't make conclusions until I got the facts and the evidence. You see some of the theater on the Hill, they tend to take political shots without any backing of information. If you look at the report, it stands for itself. It is very well footnoted. It's a very professional, document. So there's a lot of blame to go around. I just want to make sure it doesn't happen again. Now, having said that, the vice president was the last one to leave the room when the decision was made, and she was in full agreement, and she should accept that. We have a list of top DOD and state that the Congress in a resolution will condemn because nobody's been held accountable. In fact, most of them have been promoted in their positions. When I talk to the Gold Star families who lost their children that day, they are absolutely livid that no one has been held accountable, and they've in fact been promoted.
About that, talk to us about your plans, your committee's plan to extend this investigation and continue the investigation. Yeah. How do you think the administration will be responsive, the key official principles that you want to talk about and listen to?
So we want Secretary Blinken to testify. He is citing he's too busy. I said 1 day for the American people, 1 day for the Gold Star families. That's all I'm asking you. He wouldn't do it, so I served a subpoena. If I have to move for contempt again, like I did before for the dissent cable, I will. That is what delayed the report, was the obstruction from the administration trying to get testimony and evidence and documents. So we need his testimony. We believe the roads will lead to the National Security Council. Every witness we've talked to has said, and you work your investigation from the bottom up, all roads lead to Jake Sullivan, National Security Advisor, Chairman of the NSC, then you're in the inner sanctum of the White House.
In practical terms, last question, Chairman. In practical terms, what could give the public confidence that there are measures that could be taken to prevent this from happening again? The report talks about a crisis center, or crisis bureau at the State Department. Talk to us briefly about the role of that crisis bureau and what should lead people to think that it's going to work for better coordination and better planning should a situation like this happen in the future.
Well, excellent point. The fact is, Secretary Mike Pompeo established that very office. It was a crisis bureau in the event of something like this happening. On day one, the Biden administration put it on hold. And this is in the report. 2 weeks before Kabul was overrun by the Taliban, that office was abolished. So we want to look at that office to see what worked, what didn't work. How can Congress legislate a fix so that, God forbid, we have a Saigon or a Kabul again? We'll be better prepared next time.
Thank you, Chairman McCaul, for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Doing this.